Hello, I'm Alan at the Overland Legend. Welcome to my series, Restoring a Legend. In this series, I'm going to be sharing with you the restoration of my 1955 Land Rover Series 1. This story in the first episode is about how we found that Landy. The story goes back almost 22 years when we set out on an epic journey to save a legend.
Perched halfway up a hill under a tree, waiting patiently in the wind-blown grass, looking over the valley is the Series 1 Land Rover with no owner and looking for a home. Only the giggles and laughs of young kids, the mutter of working women, distant cowbells, and the rumble of a forestry tractor keep this forlorn Land Rover company.
And that was exactly how we found that Landy. It was under a tree, in the shade of a tree on the side of a hill, the wind blowing across, and it's just views across the valley. Brian and Shelley had found this Landy on a GPS expedition that they were doing, plotting a 4x4 route out in the Pitratif Pongola area. And Brian had decided, no, we need to rescue this Land Rover. And so we planned an epic expedition to go and rescue that Series 1. It was a couple of months after we had made contact with the farmers and got the right information and got the permission to do it. And so we planned this epic expedition with a vehicle trailer. I took my D90, and we were planning to do a recovery in one day. So it was going to be a long drive out there, and then we took everything we needed to be able to recover the Landy. We had the exact GPS location, so we had the coordinates, and so we expected it to be quite easy. We knew that the Land Rover didn't have a back axle, so we took along a back axle and we took some wheels with 4 wheels and a couple of tools, and we set off. We didn't expect any problems. We thought it would be fairly easy. The access seemed to be quite simple, with some good dirt roads leading up to the vehicle, and then there was about a 500-meter sort of little stretch up the hill to get to the vehicle, so we didn't anticipate any problems. But I tell you, what we experienced that day was an epic adventure, and the journey down there was already bad in the mist across the escarpment, so it was slow going. And we eventually got there, and that meant that all the roads were wet, and even though we had the GPS coordinates, we couldn't find the roads properly because we didn't have a map with the map didn't correspond with the GPS. And so we eventually got lost in the sappy forests, and we eventually stopped and asked one of the local foresters, and he kind of knew of the vehicle and said he would help us. It was too difficult to explain, so he led off in his 1400 Datsun Bucky, and we followed him, and we thought, okay, great, now we're all sorted, and only to find that he just led us to the end of the forest and pointed in a direction into the hills and said, it's over that hill, that's where you'll find the Landy. And so off we set.
Access to the vehicle was disastrous. After 5 to 10 kilometers of slippery mud tracks in and out, up and down in the sappy forest, a 1 kilometer rock and mud track led to the top of the hill, after which no road leads to the Series 1. Normally this is what you die for, but with a low bed trailer behind a D90 it becomes very challenging, and that's still while the trailer was empty. Eventually we arrive at the vehicle, only to discover that there are no springs on the back and the front hubs are rusted solid. Our penetrating spray has run out and all we have is a small hand winch. The vehicle is also on a side slope, that makes the proposition of jacking and winching even more difficult. After spending an hour deliberating the pros and cons of continuing the salvage, we get to work fitting the rear axle without springs and getting the vehicle mobile. It takes a painstaking 4 hours of careful winching and use of the high lift jack to get the vehicle onto the trailer. Thankfully the sun has come out for a few hours and dried up the tracks a little bit, but we still had to rush to get going before the sun set and the rain returned. The D90 performed faultlessly, pulling the 2-ton payload up and down the slippery tracks. We all breathed a huge sigh of relief once we reached the tar again, with everything still intact.
I still remember the journey home. We left just after sunset. We were tired and it was going to be a long drive. But I remember looking in the rear view mirror and just looking back and seeing that smiling face of that Series 1. And I couldn't help wonder, you know, what were the stories that Landy had and what sort of stories it would have in future. And a couple of weeks later, Brian actually went back to that area and found the bonnet and the 2 doors. They were on a hill on the other side of the valley at a kraal, and we actually recovered those, and so I've still got them and I'm going to be using those doors. And then it was probably, well, it was at least 18 years that Landy stood outside again before I eventually pulled it into the garage to restore it. But that's the story for another day.
What a great story, and thanks so much for watching till the end. In the next episode we look at the start of the restoration, so please subscribe and like the video and you'll see the next episode. Thanks a lot.